The blowout is in the rearview mirror and a chance to clinch just ahead for Oklahoma City. The Thunder beat Minnesota on the road 128-126. In terms of margin of victory, they were 44 points better than in Game 3. And now on the precipice of a trip to the NBA Finals. Wesley Matthews, Greg Anthony, I'm Matt Weiner. It's Playoff Central Live presented by AT&T. Couple of bottom lines for me. OKC's young stars were better than Minnesota's stars in this game. And possessions. The Thunder got off 11 more shots because, in large part, because of Timberwolves' turnover issues, which plagued them throughout the game.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Basketball is a simple game. It really does come down to possessions. And when you're at this level, if you get 11 more opportunities than your opponent, it's hard to overcome that. I mean, the fact that Minnesota had a chance in this game with how Randall and Edwards played compared to how you talked about with Williams and SGA, that says a lot about that supporting cast. But ultimately in these situations, your best players have got to be able to deliver. And I thought SGA and Jalen Williams were incredible. Factor that, we talked about turnovers, but 19 offensive rebounds he gave up in this game as well. So the inability to finish the defense. You think about it. Minnesota shot 51 from the field, 44 from three, had a +6 free throw advantage, and lost. So regardless of how your best players play, you did enough to win the game.
Yeah. But
your inability to control that defensive backboard and the fact that you had all those turnovers, especially in that first half, that kind of set the tone. And give OKC a lot of credit because it is not easy to win on the road. But we talked about it pregame. I felt like getting blown out would work to their advantage because it's so much easier to be motivated and play better after a game like that because you know that's not who you are. And SGA and Co. showed up and showed out tonight.
What stood out for you?
I mean, to piggyback on what you said about, to put the game in the rear view when, being inexperienced, when you get blown out in a playoff game, it only counts for one game. It only counts for one loss. You can't get 2, 3, no style points, whatever that is. But you almost mentally check out of it, before the game's over with. Hey, let's get out of this healthy. We know this isn't us, like you said, and let's lock into what we need to do. And that's exactly what they did. There was no thinking. They came out and they played. They played basketball. Jalen Williams was aggressive off the rip. Shea was aggressive off the rip. And what I love to see was Chet, from experience playing playoff games in your home state, it's a little bit to that. For him to be, I was on the right side, being, Wisconsin, Milwaukee. He was, doing that as the opposing player. So for him to settle back in and really be that third guy, that's when they drafted him, when they had all these high expectations for him. He's showing what he's capable of doing, and he really filled a big void for these guys tonight on the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball.
Chet Holmgren, the Minnesota native, had 21 7-boards, 3 block shots. The 3 primary Oklahoma City stars, and there are a lot of really good players on this roster, accounted for 95 of their 128 points. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander became the 3rd in Oklahoma City playoff history with a 40-point game, joining Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. And OKC gets to head home and Wednesday night try to play their way to the NBA Finals. The flip side of that, guys, is the OKC defense on Anthony Edwards in particular was excellent because somebody was on him and in his face from the get-go tonight.
Yeah, and I thought Lou Dort really set the tone. I thought their entire team did. You could just see how they dictated defensively. Now, we're saying that, and Minnesota still scored 126 points.
Yeah.
But what they were able to do is take away the best players. It forced other guys to step up, which they did. But Edwards and Randall struggled, not just in terms of making shots, but taking care of the basketball. I think they combined for 9 turnovers as well. So, when you play that way, they basically were playing uphill the entire night. Like, they were always trying to scratch and claw and get back in the game because of the hole they dug themselves. And it's hard to play that way. They just could never come up with stretches where they could get stops. At the end of that game, offensively, they scored literally every possession. They couldn't get a stop. And if they got a stop initially, they couldn't secure the defensive backboard.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that ultimately doomed them in this game. And we talked about it. This game is far more difficult to recover from than getting blown out. Because you're going to look at all the different ways and things you could have done to change the outcome in a one-possession game. And so it'll be tough for Coach Finch and his group to regroup, but they'll come out desperate in that game, and they'll have a chance because ultimately, in a weird way, nothing's changed. When you play in the postseason, a lot of times when you play a great team, you have to mentally feel like we got to win 2 there. So if your mindset's got to be, we got to go win Game 5. If we get Game 5, we'll get another chance. You want to believe that. So we'll have to see how they respond on the road in that next one.
Let's hear from Minnesota's head coach Chris Finch at the microphone in Minneapolis.
Chris, it just seemed like offensive rebounds and turnovers were kind of the things that made it difficult to get over the hump tonight.
Absolutely. It's they had 40 between the two. You're not going to beat a team like this if you're certainly turning it over 20-plus times and letting them have a bunch of second-chance opportunities. And we knew that. So
Shea and J-Dub just really had it in the fourth. Like, what made it so difficult to defend and keep them from getting
they got to their spots and they rose up and made shots over us, but we got to do a better job of trying to contain that first dribble like we did Game 3. Did a much better job there. So,
Chris, you have a balance between Ant going off and given what the game gives him. How do you think he played tonight?
I thought second half was more aggressive. He got downhill. We got him off the ball a little bit more. When he got to the paint, I thought he found some people, made the right plays. I think first half he lagged behind a little bit too much. He needed to get out in front so we could stretch the floor and screen for him a bit. But second half was much better.
Chris, similarly, what did you think of Julius tonight? And
Yeah, it's, didn't have a great night, obviously. Bench was really, really good, so I rolled with them. They were finding shots for each other. They shot the ball extremely well from the three-point line, which, we did a good job of finding those things. That's the guys that we chose to go with there. So.
On the offensive rebounds, was it, from your vantage point, a matter of just effort, or was it?
Yeah, it was. They on a lot of them hit first. They rebounded well out of their area. They came from distance to get stuff. I think some of them were long. Those we were all trying to crack back, and some of them were long, and we weren't able to get those, particularly later in the game. So.
It was a 2-point game.
Yeah.
Was the difference in a 2-2 series or 3-1?
Yeah.
How do you kind of emphasis upon you guys that there's still more series to play?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. But this isn't the formula to get it done. And I think that's the most important thing to take away from tonight. So.
Chris, you mentioned pregame about the decision making when you guys are making quick decisions.
Yeah.
Those turnovers go down. How much of that did you see in terms of?
Yeah, they. I didn't think we started the game with that, kind of mindset and mentality and imposing ourselves offensively. We turned it over 7 times in the first quarter, and a lot of those were just, trying to play in traffic, taking on matchups that invited more, attention and more of a crowd, and going anywhere. So.
Chris, Nikhil leads you guys in scoring and is taking on difficult defensive matchups. Just what did you see from what he gave you?
Yeah, he had a great night. He shot the ball well. He got to the hoop. He made the right play. He battled his tail off, defensively. He's outstanding. He's really been playing well of late. So.
And Chris, how about Dante? Just like what he gave you off the bench.
Yeah, really good again. It was good to see him out there knocking down shots. And again, those guys really did a good job of finding each other, moving the ball, and they had really good looks as a result of it.
The defensive looks that you give Shea, like how do you kind of make the decision in game, whether throwing a couple at him or just kind of trying to go one-on-one and make it tough on him, kind of individually that way?
He's 13 for 30. It's obviously went to the line 14 times. That's too much, but 13 for 30 is a pretty good defensive effort there when it comes to 2-point percentage. I know he's really, really good, but it's the 16 for 37 from the 3-point line that hurt us a lot more than the 13 for 30 it did. So.
Jaden came out really aggressive today. Just what kind of boost did he give you in that first quarter? And is that something he can kind of do more throughout the game?
Yeah, he's been doing a good job all series. I mean, he's been really aggressive. He's shot the ball well.